Today, we are going to be ranking every single vehicle that was offered with the Hellcat engine. Now, the Hellcat engine has to be one of the most iconic American powertrains of the 21st century. Introduced by Dodge in 2015, it was a 6.2-liter supercharged V8 that made over 700 horsepower and completely redefined the modern muscle car segment. It was based on the 6.4-liter Hemi, which was already a very robust powertrain, and it only built up from there. The Hellcat was designed specifically to offer very high levels of performance for sustained periods of time. So some of those upgrades included forged internals, a beefed up cooling system, and of course the 2.4-liter supercharger. The result was power, a lot of horsepower. 707 to be exact in its early iterations. So that kind of leads to the question, why did Dodge invest all of this time and money into building this powertrain? The reason is because in the early 2010s, the brand was kind of at a crossroads. The Halo car, the Dodge Viper that people had looked up to for so long, was already on its way out, and this kind of nostalgia around these modern day muscle cars was starting to peak. The Camaro ZL1, the Mustang GT500 were rapidly increasing in horsepower, and Dodge needed something to separate them from the pack. And it also helped that the Hellcat, Red Eye, and Demon namesakes were all very excellent pieces of branding. Over the years, this powertrain ended up finding its way into a handful of different models under the Dodge, Jeep, and Ram brands. And each one of these different models kind of had their own purpose, whether it was trying to enter into a new segment or just push the limits of absurdity. So we are now going to rank every production vehicle that was offered with the Hellcat engine from least to most impactful. And in last place is the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trackhawk. Now, admittedly, I already made a short form content video about this, and if you haven't seen it already, be sure to check out my shorts on here or also at Coslo's on TikTok, but I got a lot of pushback on this. Objectively, the Trackhawk is a very impressive vehicle. It is a mid-size sedan with over 700 horsepower that is capable of doing 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. But in the broader context of the Hellcat lineup, I really think the Trackhawk did the least to kind of push the envelope and is kind of the least compelling out of all the different models. Yes, it is incredibly quick. Yes, it is an absurd vehicle. Taking a big, powerful, supercharged V8 or turbocharged V8 and slapping it into a mid-size SUV has been done before, been done after the Trackhawk, and overall I just think executed a whole lot better. You could just look to the Germans with Mercedes-AMG, BMW, Porsche. They all make super powerful SUVs, as do some of the Italians with Lamborghini and now Ferrari. The Trackhawk's biggest issue is not its lack of capability, it's its lack of identity. From Jeep's perspective, the Trackhawk was really a brand flex. It took one of their most popular SUVs, put an incredibly powerful engine into it, and just kind of rode on that shock factor. I will give the Trackhawk some credit in that it is incredibly beloved by enthusiasts, especially those that are in my comment section, but it really didn't do anything new. It didn't really carve out a new niche in the market in the same way that some of these other models did. Now, one spot above the Trackhawk is the Dodge Durango SRT Hellcat. Now, when ranking these two vehicles, the difference is not night and day. I think they are very close. Now, while the Trackhawk did manage to outsell the Durango and largely I think is the more memorable vehicle, where I give the Durango SRT Hellcat some credit is for breaking new ground. Because full-size SUVs like the Durango are not usually receiving this level of power. Compared to the Trackhawk, that mid-size SUV segment is pretty saturated with high-performance offerings. Something that is intended to haul around 7+ passengers and has a relatively high towing capacity is usually not getting a 700 horsepower V8. This Durango was also intended to only be produced for one model year. Due to high demand, Dodge ended up bringing it back for 2023, and then got hit with a class action lawsuit from a bunch of 2021 buyers who were under the impression that they were getting a limited edition vehicle. That alone speaks to how desirable this absurd package really was. Dodge's thinking here was pretty clear. If people wanted performance, they were going to offer it in every segment possible. And for a short period of time, the Durango stood alone as an SUV of this size, offering such a high level of power, and would kind of lay the groundwork for future vehicles like the Cadillac Escalade V. And it also succeeded in expanding Dodge's reach into a new customer base for people that wanted enough space to haul around their kids, their groceries, and also be able to haul something at the same time while still driving around a 700 horsepower supercharged V8. Now we are going to get into the core of the Hellcat lineup and talk about the Charger. The Charger Hellcat was really something that was unexpected. A 4-door, full-size American sedan with a back seat and a trunk that had supercar levels of performance at a fraction of the price. And it also filled a pretty unique niche as well. There were other high-performance sedans that were available at this time, tons of luxury German offerings, and even in the US, there was the Cadillac CTS-V, but there wasn't anything that was really leaning into kind of its heritage in the same way that the Charger did. The Charger nameplate is already incredibly iconic, and to double down on that with such a high level of performance makes a really desirable car. Another interesting point is that around the time that this car was introduced, a lot of other automakers were starting to phase out their large sedans or downsize to turbo powertrains, but Dodge did not do that. The Charger Hellcat was not trying to be subtle or sophisticated. It was cheap speed with 4 doors and a warranty. And in conjunction with its Challenger sibling, these two cars would go on to be some of the most iconic of the 2010s, and at the same time, they would also help to prolong the Challenger and Charger platform, likely well past its true expiration date. Next up, we are going to talk about a truck that completely redefined expectations with the Ram TRX. When Ford introduced the Raptor in 2010, it created a new segment in the pickup truck market for these high-performance, off-road focused trucks. Then with the second generation of the truck, Ford downsized to a turbo V6 engine, and meanwhile, Ram was kind of waiting in the wings and said, hey, what if we took that original Ford Raptor and instead of downsizing the engine, we gave it an extra 250 horsepower. The result was the Ram TRX, which featured a 700 horsepower supercharged V8, massive tires, long travel suspension, and just an overall very commanding presence. And more than anything, it was an excellent marketing decision. Ram took the Hellcat formula and basically created a new segment of super trucks. From a branding standpoint, the TRX was about differentiating Ram from Ford. Where Ford was looking to downsize from a V8 to a V6, Ram was taking their V8 and slapping a supercharger on it. Ford would eventually answer back with the Raptor R, but at that point they were already a few steps behind. The TRX had already redefined what a high-performance truck could be, and it got people excited and talking about the Ram brand again, which is something that they honestly really needed. And of course, at the top of the hill, the #1 most impactful Hellcat model, the Challenger. When this car launched in 2015, it completely changed the conversation around American performance cars. 700 horsepower, a 6-speed manual transmission, and at the time, a starting price under $60,000. And part of what made this car so special is that it was tapping into the Challenger's heritage. Its retro styling was tied very closely to the 1970s Challenger, but taking that mentality and bringing it into the current day. This car was not pretending to be anything that it's not. It was unapologetically American and proud of its size, its weight, and its sound. And another thing that really set the Challenger apart is just how far Dodge pushed it. It was the only model in the Hellcat lineup that ended up getting turned into the Demon with 840 horsepower and eventually the Demon 170 with 1,000. And to zoom out a little bit from my brand perspective, Dodge chose the Challenger as the showcase of what they were truly capable of when they took all restrictions off. In many ways, the Challenger really represents kind of the heart of the Hellcat story. From its original base model Hellcat form to the eventual Demon 170, the Challenger Hellcat proved that there was still an appetite for raw, loud, supercharged American performance. So where exactly does that leave us? I would argue that the Hellcat engine is not simply just a powertrain, it was really a philosophy for Dodge, and it earmarked a really interesting time in performance cars. Probably the last era where you can truly prioritize excess, presence, and simplicity over precision engineering and lap times. Now, not all of the Hellcat models were perfect, and in fact, I would argue that most of them were pretty inherently flawed. You do need to give Dodge some credit. In an era where automakers love to play it safe, they made themselves impossible to ignore. Now, as of right now, there are some rumors about the Hellcat potentially being revived. We will save that discussion for another video, but I'll just say this. Even if we never see another factory-equipped Hellcat model ever again, this powertrain has secured its legacy and will go down as one of the most iconic engines of the 21st century.